Starrcade. That's the most talked about. Man, that was 25 years ago, and they still talk about it.
The idea of making a heel referee, I think, is brilliant.
It just ignited all of a sudden, and all of a sudden people was pissed off at me. We got a big pop out of that, and the Dudley Boyz put in the work, man. All I really did was stand on the apron and get heat until it was time to come in at the end.
Nick, wow, such a pleasure to have you on here, because when you think of WCW and you think of Nitro, sure, you think of Goldberg and Sting and DDP and Steiner, but you think of Nick Patrick too. So I'm so pumped to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I love that you come from the era where referees had names. Like, that doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, they try to keep them all vanilla. I don't think they want to pay them residuals for down the road, but so I think that's why they do that. But I was very fortunate to come through the time I did. I started back in the territory days and made that transfer from where the big companies, Vince gobbled up pretty much all the top guys, and little territories all started dying off, and it turned up to him being two big companies battling against each other. And the transfer from territory days, with cable TV being so big, and all of a sudden, down in Georgia, Channel 17 was huge for Georgia Championship Wrestling, and then, which turned into WCW eventually down the road. And we went from just being a Georgia company to going. We'd be in Georgia and Alabama and all of our locals, but every other week we was going up to either Northern Ohio and Michigan or Southern Ohio and West Virginia, and just back and forth, because those territories was hot for us at the time. And then next thing they realized, well, damn, we're being seen everywhere. Let's and wham. And we thought we traveled a lot back then when we was just like every other week going out of town. Little did we know what lied ahead of us.
Man, I'm fascinated by the idea that, moments in life can really shape who you become and what ends up with your life. How close were you to actually becoming a wrestler instead of just a referee?
I did wrestle. I started off as a referee, and in 1984, I became a wrestler. I wrestled for 2 years before I blew my knee out real bad. I started off, I shot an angle. I was with Georgia Championship Wrestling right before Crockett bought it back from Jim Barnett. I was there when Barnett still had it, and they shot an angle with me and Bob Roop. I was going to become a wrestler there right before Crockett bought it, and then Crockett came, so I didn't really want to go back to being a ref, or especially up there for them. If I wanted to go up there, I wanted to work and try to make money, not be a ref. And they kind of expected a lot of the refs to come run and tell and stuff, and that was never my gig. So I ended up working independent, and my dad was down and wrestling in the Pensacola territory, which is Continental Wrestling, and Johnny Rich was down there. They had a group of baby faces called the Rat Patrol. And it was Johnny and Scott Armstrong, Steve Armstrong. I think Tonga Kid was there at first, but he had already phased out by the time I come along. Well, anyway, Johnny was at a party with Tommy, and a big beef broke out, and Johnny was like trying to cover Tommy's back, and somebody stabbed him several times. And it was, he was out for a while. He was hurt bad. It could have killed him, but he was lucky it didn't hit any major organs. It was some flesh wounds, but he got stabbed 2 or 3 times and cut. And so they needed somebody to fill that spot. And I was working. I had just stopped working for Georgia Championship Wrestling because Crockett's had taken it over, and I was working little indies at Gunkel Enterprises. Ann Gunkel was running some indie shows, so I was working for her trying to get that little thing going, and popped through my dad threw my name in. He said, "Hey, Nick's available if you need somebody to fill that spot." And I said, "Oh, call him." So in 2 weeks I was down and working the Pensacola territory, which was so cool, man. It was awesome. You live down in Pensacola, and a lot of my friends lived in Gulf Breeze, which was right across the causeway, and the trips were short. The longest trip you had was every other week. You'd have to go up to like Huntsville or Muscle Shoals, and then you might spend a night. But for the most part, the trips were short. And for the most part, you could be on the beach almost every day if you wanted to, early in the day and go make your shot and come back. It was such a cool life. and you made decent money, and you learned how to work. That was the thing, that you work with different guys that were really good at their craft, and you made money doing it. A lot of guys would starve to death trying to learn their craft, but there were a couple of territories that if you were fortunate enough to get in there, you could learn and still make money and still do pretty good. I was an underneath wrestler there, and I made more as a referee in Georgia Championship Wrestling because it was hot. It was traveling. I made more as a referee than a lot of guys did working underneath middle in some of the different territories. So when I went down to Pensacola, I made pretty close to my referee money, not quite, but real close as an underneath guy. So I was tickled, and I got to stay with my dad, because we'd always worked different territories. We was together in WCW for a long time, but during the territory days, when I started refereeing, I was in Georgia Championship Wrestling until I started skipping around to a couple of territories before they all got gobbled up and I got hurt. But staying with Pop down in Pensacola, man, that was a really fun time. He had changed his gimmick from, my dad was known as, he was the assassin, the original assassin. And he was wrestling as the Flame down there at that time. And Bob Armstrong had put on the mask and become the Bullet. So it was funny when we were kids, Pop and Bob had the big feud in Atlanta, and it was big money for them. And they rekindled the feud, both of them with different gimmicks down in Pensacola. And I remember me and as the Rat Patrol, me and the Armstrong boys, we were watching the matches one time, and we had gone out there. We were the young guys, man. We were young and hungry and going out there working hard, bam, bam, still throwing down. And we watched Pop and Bob go out there, and they had the people going absolutely freaking crazy. And they hadn't even touched each other for about 10 to 12 minutes, just all Shakespeare going to do it and then back off. And it was intense. You could just feel the electricity in the room. And we all looked at each other like, holy crap, we're going out there. We're bam, 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 doing all this stuff,
Yeah.
Look at them. They've just put in almost 12 minutes. They hadn't even really locked up yet. That was a pretty good learning moment right there. But you can only do that when you're over. When you're young and hungry, you got to work young and hungry. That's the only way you're ever going to get over. If you think you're over and you're not, then not is what you'll always be.
Do you feel like when you started refereeing that like someone actually helped you like learn the ropes there? Because when you're wrestling, you're
I had a lot of people help me.
Because I think there's a lot of people who think like, oh, I've worked enough matches as a wrestler. I know how to referee.
Oh no,
so many like intricate things you don't know.
When I knew that they wanted to do the gimmick with me, I had 4 guys that was coming and showing up early to the matches and working out in the ring with me. Great guys, and you couldn't ask for any better guys. Now think about going and learning the business from Tim Horner, Brad Armstrong, Buzz Sawyer, and Ronnie Garvin. Imagine being a young green guy and those 4 guys showing up early at buildings and getting in the ring with you and working out with you and teaching you, man. That was, man, you can't, kids nowadays are spending so much money to go to these wrestling schools, and you couldn't get any better experience than that, man. Because both perspectives, excellent heels, excellent baby faces, and different styles, wrestling styles and brawler styles and punch, strike. It was a lot. But it was a great learning process, man. And they had run me until I actually, they would put a trash can out there by the ring, and man, we'd go till I blow, man. And once I threw up, then I'd have to stop, man, and we'd stop. But I had to go referee matches that night too, which at that point in time, we didn't always have 2 or 3 refs. Sometimes one ref did the whole show, man. So if I was in there bouncing around with those 4 guys for an hour and then going and reffing the whole show, by the end of the night, man, I was shot. But it was a great experience, and those were the guys that actually got in the ring and helped me the most.
What do you think are like some of the intricate details of being a referee that the average fan might not see when they're watching a match?
How mainly in live television production, there's a lot that we are involved in that people don't realize, because they have us with IFB. We got the earpiece on where people are talking to us, and we keep time. And if there's a message that needs to be delivered, we do that. And you have to do it without being picked up on, without the camera. So, you'll see them talking, but you never know what they're saying. But it's so hard to do because there's a microphone on every ring post and on every camera. So there's like 8 microphones in the area, and you're trying to get to guys and talk. So what I used to try and do was like, if I'd get in and I'd like check for a choke, and I'd be saying motion and no choke, but I'd be saying something else, you know. So that's how I did a lot of that. And you got to talk low. You got, because that there's 8 microphones around, so you almost got to grit your teeth and talk, you know, talk low, almost mumble. You got to be in close enough where you got that eye contact with it, you know. You know, I used to, when I grab them by the wrist, I'd squeeze it, and when, as soon as they'd look up at me, I knew I had their attention. I'd mumble out whatever I need to say to them, you know, and keep moving.
Man, how awesome is Nick Patrick? Quick pause from this conversation with the legend, and there's a reason these lights behind me are blue, because this episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. Guys, let's talk about your Dwayne Johnson. Let's help increase your performance and your confidence in the bedroom. Guys, we're talking about BlueChew.com. Blue Chew is a unique service online that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but they're in chewable tablets, and it's a fraction of the cost. And you can take these anytime, day or night, so you can be ready to go when that big moment happens. The process is super simple. Just sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive the prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. So there's no doctor's visits, there's no awkward conversations, there's no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And the tablets are made right here in the USA, and they're delivered to you discreetly. So the neighbors don't know what's going on here. The postman doesn't know what's going on here. But I can tell you this, that when your package arrives, your package arrives. And Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it, and they are hooking you up in the biggest possible way. It's free. Yeah, you heard me right. Your first month is absolutely free. All you have to do is just pay $5 for shipping when you use the code CVV. So go to BlueChew.com, use the code CVV, and yeah, your first month is free. How many times do I need to say this? What a deal. Your first month is free when you use the code CVV. So check out BlueChew.com to get yourself set up today. You were involved in some of the biggest matches in WCW history.
Yes.
I mean, and we're going to spend most of this episode, I'm sure, you know, listing them off, but I'm curious, when did you realize that WCW was really starting to gain the popularity that it had?
When our houses turned around and there was actually people waiting at the building to see us when we pulled up. You know, it changed. You know, when you're number 2 for a long time, and we was number 2 for a long time, it's there's a different feel and different vibe. Everybody's looking at the numbers, and all of a sudden when you see those numbers, and you know, it changes everything. It changes the whole attitude of the locker room. It changes the whole attitude of the office, and it puts everybody on a high, you know, and that's a pretty incredible feeling, actually. You know, it's a feeling of accomplishment, especially when the enemy was as strong as our enemy was. You know, to come from being number 2 for as long as we was, to all of a sudden, bam, now, and we're handing it to them pretty good all of a sudden. You know, not just, you know, we squeaked by first, and all of a sudden, bam, we started dropping bombs on them, and they had to completely regroup. So, you know, that's just a great feeling of accomplishment. You know. Unfortunately, our folks didn't know. They knew how to build the fire. They just didn't know how to kindle it and keep it going. You know, the business is like a roller coaster. You know, it goes in cycles. You're going to up and peak, and it's going to, you know, it's going to drop. But you have to learn how to get other things hot and other things ready, so that drop is not as drastic as it can be, and to try to get that turn back up, you know, to happen before you bottom out, you know. So then that takes good booking and good writing and good management. And it takes the whole machine, everything working together.
During those 83 weeks when Raw was getting beaten by Nitro, was there ever a feeling backstage in WCW of like, man, this is great. We're never going to be the number 2 show ever again?
No, you hope that, but I never thought that, because I mean, only a fool would think that. Yeah. You know, that's underestimating your enemy. And knowing the enemy that we had, you know, there was always something in the fire. You know, and especially towards the end of WCW, you could really see the difference in the philosophy of the way things were run. That WWE was, or WWF at the time, they were a family business, man, and they were building, even though they've become public, they were building something to hand down to the next generation and to keep, to build. And it seemed like there toward the end, WCW was more like just a business, like maybe even a bar business that you would get, and you get it hot and you try to sell it and get out of it before it tanks out, they had more that type of, it seemed like that attitude of running the business. It wasn't something that they were trying to hand down to their children and their grandchildren, different philosophy. And I think that was one of the things that made us slip at the end too, because, WWE or the F at the time was, man, they dug their heels in. They were fighting for their lives. That was their family. That was their family business. And, you fight differently when you're fighting for your life than you do when, it's just a business that we'll sell it when it starts to tank out a little bit,
Yeah. Do you remember a specific match, Nitro, pay-per-view where you went, I feel like we're not on the same path that we were on before?
It wasn't a particular TV. It was a time frame, and it wasn't exactly when the guy first come in, because I wanted to give everybody a chance. But after a while, once Vince Russo had come in and was in charge of writing everything and had as much stroke as he had, could get people fired if they disagreed with it. And after watching and listening to him, I grew up in the business, man. And it's my life. It's not a hobby to me. It's even to this day with the company that I'm building. I take care of I got my elderly mother and I got an autistic son. I take care of it. I'm running a wrestling company, and I'm not running it so I can book my buddies that I hang out with, and we can, I don't, so I can get myself a belt and put it on me. That ain't what I'm doing. I'm trying to make a business out of it. And, anyway, that's how we approach it. And every now and then I might get lost on questions because I get so carried away starting telling stories, and my mind goes to so many different places when you ask me. But as far as a particular match, no, I didn't feel a particular match, but the particular era, a few months in to maybe 6 months into Russo coming in, I could feel, man, if we keep going down this road, it ain't coming back up. And it was right, so.
Well, look, you tell great stories. This is why this is why you have your show on Ad Free Shows, Mailbag Monday with Nick Patrick, which everybody should tune into if they're listening to this. Wherever they're listening to this, they can go find your podcast. Congrats on that, by the way, Nick.
Well, thank you very much. It's a lot of fun, man. I think fans call in, or they don't call in, they write in questions, and Cassio reads them out and tells who they're from. And we talk about anything, man. It's cool. And mostly it's all wrestling questions, though, because my career spans so long.
So long.
It could, yeah. I mean, I started back in, man, I've been around here as long as rocks, man. I started back in the territory. My first gig, actually, this is kind of funny. I was in the 5th grade. I ring announced when I was in the 5th grade.
What?
But my dad, that was summertime when I wasn't going to school. My dad would take me to towns with him every now and then. We went to, I think it was Statesboro, Georgia. And I went with him, and they didn't have anybody that to announce. And my dad's, the kid will do it. And man, it scared me because I was in school. I was that kid. I was shy, man, when I was young. I'm still kind of shy. You would never think as much as I run my mouth now. But when I was a kid, I was that kid that if you had to read in class, I was like, oh God, I'd be like hiding behind the kid from me, hoping they didn't call my name. But I just kind of wanted to blend in and just, make it through, And now Pop said, the kid will do it. I'm out here going to be the MC for a friggin' wrestling show. And I'm in the 5th grade. So I was scared to death, man. They put me out there. I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have a megaphone. I didn't have a police bullhorn. I had nothing, man. But it was a little bitty building. And I was a little kid in the 5th grade, and Pop told me what to do and gave me all the information I needed. Just read this and he showed me some body gestures. And I was like, "I'll do this quarter." They gave me $10 for it at the end of the night. And I was like, hey, I'll do it anytime y'all need me to do it.
When we talk about the downfall of WCW, that there's a lot of fans that will point to certain moments, right? Like the finger poke of doom, or, you know, I'm sure we'll talk a bunch about it, like Starrcade 97. People look at some of these moments and go, after that, it was all downhill. You don't think it was one of those specific moments?
It was a combination of things. You know, it was all those things. You know, one of those individual things by itself couldn't have made that drastic of a move, but all of them culminating together is, to me, is my opinion of why it went down. Especially that Starrcade. You know, that's the most talked about. Man, that was 25 years ago, and they still talk about it. You know,
Yeah.
there's people anytime that people want to know about that. Man, that was as crazy as that was, and as odd and as horrible as it felt while I was doing it, because it was just. If you've heard the story, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll tell you the story if you want to hear it. But
I'm sure people will want to hear it.
Okay. Well, here's the story. I showed up for the biggest pay-per-view and gross in wrestling history, money-wise, and I knew I had the main event. And as soon as I get to the building, which is really odd because I get along good with Eric now, but back then it wasn't like we didn't get along. It's just he was a boss and I was a little grunt referee. And man, I had a lot of things going on in my life, and you know, egos and all that stuff. And he had to cater to a bunch of the egos, and I didn't have time for all that crap. People are people, man. But anyway, I show up to the building, and you know, him and I hardly ever had a conversation. You know, I'd say hello or shake hands, and that was it. Well, he come up and met me as soon as I got there, and I still have my bag on my shoulder, hadn't made it to the locker room yet. And he says, "Here's what we're doing today," and he gave me a straight finish, and I said, "That's okay. That's, you know, kind of plain. I figured that they'll dress it up during the day," and so okay, you know, and he told me to just do a straight 1, 2, 3 count, you know, not a fast count. And that was when Hogan covered Sting. So anyway, I'm there, and an hour or so goes by. You know, you're there all day long, and back then, Hogan went over his stuff. He had his own locker room, and nobody went in there except for who he was working with and who he invited in there. A security guy would go, somebody take him in there. You know, I wasn't one of those guys. You know, but that was cool because I was good enough. I knew what, you know, all you had to do is tell me what you want me to do before we walk out the screen, and I'm out the curtain, and I'm good to go. You know, and they knew that. But anyway, Eric told me how he wanted it to go. So I'm like, okay. So Hulk comes up to me first, a couple hours in, you know, while we're there. He goes, "Hey, Nick, about that count, man. Nice and slow, man. 1, 2, 3." I'm thinking, okay, that's normal. I can't do it slow. That'd be ridiculous. We're doing? There's a heat in that, you know. But I know. So about an hour or so later than that, Sting comes up to me and says, "Hey, Nick, you know about that count? Rapid fire, baby. 1, 2, 3. Bap, bap, bap." I was like, okay. So now I got one guy that's franchise, Hulk Hogan. The other guy that's the other franchise, Sting.
Yeah.
Both telling me the same finish, but two complete. Whether you count fast or whether you count slow, completely changes the complexion of the finish. You know.
Yeah. And you never talked to both of them at the same time together about this?
No, they never got us ever together, all together in the room at the same time with Hulk, Sting, me, and Eric all together in the room. That never ever once happened. Not. So I was like, okay, man. And so I looked for Eric all day long. He had his own match, so he had someplace wherever he was. I could not find him all day long. So I think to myself, well, they said straight count it, so I'll straight count it. And back then, my straight count used to be a little bit slower than normal because I had the old school 1 and 2, a little more drama. But at that time, the WWF had guys counting like their butt was on fire, man. Bap, 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 1, 2, 3, you know, like they were trying to put out a friggin' fire. So I said, well, let's go somewhere in between there. I'll go a little faster than I normally do, kind of a mild WWF count. You know, that's kind of, if you look at it, that's what I ended up giving them.
Yeah.
And the announcers, I guess, when they had, because I wasn't in a production meeting either, you know, I had other matches to handle. So once I assigned who the refs or who was going to do what, I was trying to find out my stuff. And so I, like I said, I just split the difference. I just gave it a regular count that was a little slightly faster than my normal count, but by no means a fast count. And nor was it a slow one either. It was, so I figured, what the hell, I'll split the difference, and nobody will get what they want. But the whole time I really felt like what it was is I felt like they were setting me up to be the fall guy. So because I figured, because Hulk could have got me fired. He said, "Hey man, Nick Patrick, I don't want to work with that guy no more." But I could get fired. And Sting could have done the very same thing. So I'm like, I'm going to do exactly what Eric said to do, but it'll be different than normal because I'm going to do a little faster than normal. Or I didn't know what to do. So that's ended up being what happened. And man, I got to the back and I was waiting for somebody to come up. I felt like that if everything went south and people from Turner started bitching and everybody started bitching, the easy thing to do would say, well, that damn Nick Patrick didn't do what I told him to do and fire me. And can everybody carry on? So that's what I felt was happening. So I went to the back and I got dressed and I showered and I'm waiting for somebody to come and give me my pink slip. And I'm like, well, nobody said a damn thing to me. I grabbed my bag and I got the hell on out the door, got in my car, and I went to the hotel room. I said, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to have to happen tomorrow at TV. And we never spoke of it ever again until I did the podcast with Eric Bischoff about that match.
Wow, yeah, you did the watch.
That was the first time we talked about it. That's the first time him and I ever spoke about that match in 25 years. Not after it happened.
There's people that say, man, if this was such a big, important pay-per-view, there must have been a way to track down Eric Bischoff. You must have been able to talk to somebody who could find him.
I looked everywhere. And Doug Dillinger was a security guy. I asked him, where Eric's at? I don't know. Okay. He didn't want to be talked to. Okay. He made a decision and he didn't want to, and he knew that he was going to get hammered from all sides all day long because of that decision. He had his own match to think of and the whole rest of the show to think of,
What did it come down to? Was it that Hogan didn't want to lose clean? He didn't want to put over Sting? Is that what it really
when we had the podcast with Eric, what it was is they felt that Sting had not put into the match what he should have.
He didn't have a tan. That's it.
Yeah, that was a tan, but he wasn't as pumped. But if you look at it, we watched the match back, his costume changed, but he had a different costume, but his arms were still big. He didn't, and the tan was just a metaphor, of course, and Eric said that, and I kind of agree. But I think mentally, frame of mind wise, they were different because he didn't really participate in the construction process of it. Wasn't active, and he just and Eric said he showed up and said, "Okay, how are you guys going to screw me?" So for the biggest, that was the attitude going in. And there was somebody sent me a picture of me and Hulk and Sting just as the bell rang, and we're all standing there, and I'm looking at the body language of all of us, and man, we looked like three guys that did not want to be there. And when I watched the match back, I felt horrible during it because there was so much pressure, man. That was a huge match. And I felt like I was getting set up to get fired. And and so I'm like, man, so it was horrible. But when we watched it back on that podcast, there was a point in time once it started very uncomfortably, but then they got into it and had actually a decent match, and the people got with it, and it didn't get uncomfortable again until right as we were going into the finish. And
even the finish makes, like, when you're watching it 1, 2, 3, if you're a fan seeing this live, it makes sense. It's everything that happened after that where you went, what?
Yeah, it was Brett coming out still, and starting the match again when I didn't screw Sting,
that was what was so confusing.
He was the only one that really kind of got burned out of the deal, because looking back on it, and if you watch it back and watch the people at the end of it, the pop was through the roof. Sting still got the belt, and Hogan kept all of his heat. The only person that got burned out of it was Brett. And I'm sure that was well thought of. And done by
I felt so
design.
bad.
And that wasn't
watching
done by me on design. I did what I was told to do, you know? So,
I felt bad for Brett watching back because he's like, that was a fast count. And you're like, no, it wasn't.
No, that was no. There's guys in WWE that count faster than that, you know. Well, anyway, that was the deal, and I never got fired. You know, I think they were just glad they got through it. You know, it was like, oh, that one's over. Let's get the hell on from here. You know, I truly think that's what they felt.
It comes down to though, like, why couldn't Sting just win clean? Like that would why didn't that could make sense?
I think when he didn't participate in the finish, when they didn't look like he'd been in the gym, when all those factors changed the minds of the people, because Hulk had creative control at that time. And from according to Eric, he had never really used it up to that point. And you know, it never pushed an issue on any of the things that, you know, that was written and come up with, you know, because he was helping in the construction of those things anyway. But at that point, he did. So, but according to Eric and during that other podcast, that was why, because they felt that Sting wasn't, you know, for the biggest match possibly wrestling history. And if you think about it, damn, it could have been the way it was built up. That could have been, people could be talking about that match right now, just like they do about Flair and Steamboat and Macho Man and Steamboat. Even though it wouldn't have been that kind of a technical type of match, it would have been box office personality, because they both had the psychology. So Hulk has the psychology and Sting had the fire. And it could have gone down in history as, you know, as memorable as one of those, and for that reason instead of for the reason that it did.
Jumping off of that, are you surprised that here we are 26 years later, Sting is still wrestling?
Yeah, because I talked to him, man, I don't know how long ago it was, like as time goes by, it's like maybe 6, 8 years ago, and he had a neck problem. And he told me that if he took the wrong bump, you know, the doctor told him that he'd be paralyzed. The next thing I know, he's back in the ring wrestling again. I'm like, holy crap, did you get it fixed, or did you change your mind, or what's going on, you know? But, you know, I've seen other guys do it. You know, Dean Malenko come back, he had a big giant scar down his neck. There's been a couple of guys that's had that neck surgery, and Daniel Bryan, you know, different guys have had the major neck surgery and told that they're finished. The Edge, you know, and here they come, they're right back. You know, I know that with physical therapy, you can get to where you're feeling 100% again, even 110. But after time, those injuries, when you get older, those injuries they're going to let you know they're there, even though you've rehabbed them. I'll tell you right now, I'm 62 years old and I've had 5 surgeries, and man, there's days I feel good because I train and I work out with my son. But there's other days I hadn't done anything wrong and I felt like somebody just beat my butt, man. I'm like, oh God. I tell them sometimes, people, they say, Nick, you going to get back in the ring? I said, no, I got bad knees, a bad back, a bad wrist, a bad neck, and a bad attitude. I am not getting back in the ring.
Are they all referee related injuries?
No, a lot of was wrestling. Actually, I was my main one when I was wrestling. One was reffing, and the rest were car wrecks getting to towns or coming home from towns.
Oh man,
I was in several car wrecks, but in-ring accidents and injuries were only 2 or 3 actually. I mean, other than concussions, you know, sometimes you get concussed and don't realize it, you know. But my worst concussions actually even come from car wrecks too. I only got a couple of them from working, you know, and it wasn't because somebody tagged me real hard. It was from taking a big bump and my head snapping back to hitting the mat, you know. But other than that, that's you know, that's the extent of my injuries. I told everybody I was like the Evel Knievel of referees. I had so many broken bones and surgeries on both my knees redone. I got somebody else's ACL in my left knee. I don't have one at all in my right knee, and my wrist I had pins in my wrist that they took back out when they got snapped back in a car wreck. And my neck they told me they wanted to look at my neck. I'm like, man, tell my hands or my arms go numb. And I actually got no other choice than leave my neck alone. And they wanted to put a spinal cord stimulator in my back. I've already had one back surgery, and I rejected that too, man. I do a lot of stretching. I use a lot of ice, and I work out with my son. And then I got myself off of all the pain pills and stuff. I had to, man, because, you know, wrestling, you, especially here I come through, man, we ran pretty wild. You know, we worked hard and we played hard. And you'll come to a point in life a lot of times, okay, well, this is a road right here that I'm on. And if I don't get off this road, this is dead end road, you know. This road ends up in the graveyard, and I'm getting off of this damn road and going down another one. And a lot of my friends didn't come to that realization. That's why the list is so long of guys. You know, it's just, and you can sit and try to compile the list and think of all the guys and look at it and start talking to other people, and other names will start popping in. That's how many. It's just unbelievable. And I decided that my legacy to my kids wasn't going to be that they found their dad dead in a hotel room. And I realized that with my autistic son, he loves to work out, and it's really hard to live a life and give him a life outside of sitting and watching television, passed out in your recliner on pain pills and muscle relaxers, you know? So I got myself off all that crap, and just, if I hurt, I hurt, man. And but I found that stretching and exercise and doing and ice a lot. I can't do heat, especially on my lower back, man. My lower back, if I put heat on there, both my feet go numb. I got one, my left foot's been numb for about 10 years now. You know how your foot feels when it goes to sleep? Yeah, my left foot's been asleep for 10 years. And it's funny, when my back really, really acts up, my left leg will hurt and my left foot will be like throbbing. But my right leg, which I never really used to have any weird sensations in, but my right leg is the damnedest thing, because nerve damage makes you feel weird things. My right leg will feel like it's wet, like my pants are wet. And I'm like, I can touch it and feel it, and they're not wet, but they feel wet. And it's just from nerve damage, you know. The nerves send out weird impulses, you know. But I'm grateful I still walk and I do cardio with my son. And my son's 37 years old, and he's autistic, and he kicks my butt in that gym, man. And I kick his too, though. So you know, it's funny. I tell everybody I take care of my son, but in reality, he takes care of me as much as I take care of him. And he's helping me right now to take care of my mom. My mom's 85 and it has dementia, and unfortunately, it's not at a good stage right now. She seems to be getting worse pretty regularly. But man, if it wasn't for him helping me out, it'd really be tough, you know. But on a lighter note, he's a young man that is happy every day.
I love that.
And it makes me wonder sometimes, you know, even though he's autistic and I'm always trying to strive to help, I'm like, damn, he's better off than me. He's happy every day. You know, I get grouchy about this. I got business over here. I got to go take care of this. You know, but he's just that man, just so cool and so mellow. And I've seen him react in a couple like stone ass emergencies, man. One time, his brother, I was babysitting his dog. He had a little female pit bull. She was sweet as could be. And she just come walking in from the backyard and walked up to my feet and just collapsed, man. And I was like, holy crap. And I was alone with Nick, and it was Father's Day. I know it wasn't Father's Day. It was some holiday that all the vets were closed except for one emergency clinic. So here I am crying on the phone, and I'm grabbing this dog and I'm trying to run. And Nick, man, he's opening doors. It's just like, I didn't have to tell him squat. He all of a sudden, like he just put autism on check for a minute. And his emotions were so cool. It's funny. He thinks of things in different terms, like people passing away. You know, we all grieve, and it's hurt. I just recently lost my dad, and it's been almost 2 years now. So it's not that recent. It's almost 2 years now. But in Nick's mind, because we told him, we're Christians, we believe, so when you die, you go to heaven. You go to heaven, you be with God, and you go with the people, and you see the people that your family and friends that have passed before you. So in his mind, that's what he thinks. So when Pop passed, Nick couldn't understand why we were so sad, because Pop was going to be with God and going to see all his friends and and so I'm hoping that stays with him for life, as because so far it has, and Pop was so far the only really close thing that's happened. But man, he was more of a trooper than any member of the family. He understood exactly what was going on. But Big Nick, man, when the doo-doo hits the fan, Big Nick is a cool customer, man. I like to have him in my corner.
The fact that you started off as a wrestler, I think really helped you take ref bumps. But
Yes.
there's a science, there's an art to taking a ref bump versus taking a wrestler bump.
Yeah,
And
you don't want to look. I'd never wanted to look like the wrestlers because then it looks like everybody can do this. You know what I mean?
you
I,
did
I
you
always,
did what people like to call the Patrick flop.
yeah, I told him, I said, man, you don't have to shoot me out of a cannon. You can walk up and flick me and I'll act like you shot me with a 357, man. I'd flail my arms and throw myself and do a little roll. And yeah, I tried, but I wanted it to be different, and it worked for me, and I never really hurt myself doing it. I was lucky. I hit my elbow a couple of times doing it on the floor, but for the most part, I was fine. And I didn't really have to take a whole lot of crazy bumps until I did the NWO gig. And then I took everybody's finish in WCW. And then then Vince bought it, I took everybody's finish up in WWE too, eventually. But
What was the hardest finish to take?
Power bomb. Because even when you got to make sure you land flat. And even if you land flat, you're landing hard, and it's going to knock the wind out of you a little bit. That to me was the hardest bump, the most impactful bump. There's different bumps that are more of a degree of difficulty. Like I had Big Show one time press slam me out over the top rope out onto some guys out on the floor. That's a little more of a degree of difficulty, but I had Big Scott Norton and a couple of big guys down there to catch me. So
Yeah.
I felt fairly comfortable with it, And it looked pretty cool too. It ended up making the cover of WCW magazine at the time. But I remember I was scared. And as he threw me, my left hand caught that top rope, and the rest of me looked like I was parachute diving. And they caught that, and that ended up being on the cover of the magazine. I thought that was a pretty cool shot. But that was a more degree of difficulty. But the power bomb is man. Especially if you take it like from somebody like Kevin Nash, you're up there.
A long way to fall.
Yes, yeah. And if he wanted to put some oomph into it, man, it'd be hard for you. He was always good though. He'd get you up and he'd get you where you could lay out and land flat. He'd protect you.
The idea of making a heel referee, I think, is brilliant. Whose idea was this to make you exclusively the NWO referee?
That was Kevin Sullivan's idea. He come up and he approached Eric, and then I guess the two of them pretty much hatched it. But for the most part, it was at the beginning. Almost everything was Kevin. He was the one that come to me and told me what they wanted me to do, and they wanted it to progress a little slower actually than it did. But man, it just ignited all of a sudden, and all of a sudden people was pissed off at me. And I think the one that really, when they realized that they had to go ahead and quit milking it and start going with it, is when we was at Sturgis and they had me do the deal where Lex went to rack a guy and he clipped me with his feet, and I went down. When I went down, I took his knee out, clipped his knee, and was it an accident? Was it not an accident?
Yeah,
I've been denying all these things, but when that happened, from that point on, they were hot at me, and milking it and trying to do it slow wasn't going to work anymore. So they went ahead and greenlighted it. And man, I ended up getting some heat out of that thing. That was a lot of fun. That was probably the most fun I had in the business. Other than when you're learning and beginning your beginning working stages as you're becoming a wrestler, that's awesome fun too. Don't get me wrong, but as far as when being in an international company, when it becomes pretty much all about business, that was the most fun that I had working for big companies.
Anytime that you got on the mic and you got to cut a promo, it was so good because the crowd hated you so much.
Thank you, man. That was fun too, because they didn't put me into a box with my promos. They come up to me and they would give me bullet points that they wanted me to get over. Okay, say this, this, and this. Just work that into your deal. And I would go off by myself, and I usually go sit in my car, so I could check out and facial expression and stuff. And I just come up with my own spiel and practice it, in the car where I could get away from everybody and be quiet, and I'd not hear 10 things going on in the background. I could focus my attention. And I just would get into character and try to think of what I would say, being a liar, trying to trying to weasel my way through and make excuses and fibs about, well, no, I'd never, I'd never do that. I was that purely by accident, and until it was time to become an ass. And then I would, then I amped it up more, but I still approached it the same way. I'd go out to myself and they'd give me the bullet points and I'd go out and put it together and come back and do it. But like nowadays, they give these kids these big long scripts and they have to read it and remember it, and they practice it over and over before the show. And my promos would have sucked if I hadn't done it that way, honestly, because I wouldn't have had the feel, I wouldn't have had the emotion, it wouldn't have been me. There's a little part of me in the other, in the Nick Patrick character that may let me be able to deliver, and otherwise you're just, and you can see it in a lot of these kids' eyes too. Some of them are very good at it, but when the greener kids, you can tell that, their wheels are turning. They're trying to think of what the next line is instead of getting that real facial expression that could have got that point across, because your promos are as important as with body language and facial expression as your work is.
Did anyone ever tell you that you looked like Danny McBride, the actor Danny McBride from Eastbound and Down, when you had the hair and the goatee?
Oh yeah, that and another guy named Kenny something.
That's the character he played, Kenny Powers.
Oh, Kenny Powers, yeah. I hear that a lot. I heard that a lot back when I had the mullet back in the day. Yeah, I get that sometimes. That's funny. I never heard from Kenny Powers.
It's a spitting image. I mean, if there's ever a movie made about Nick Patrick's life, I think we know exactly who's going to be playing you.
Yeah, and if they ever do anything where we do a heel switch referee gimmick, man, we could have him go in and make the false count, and we could do the Hebner gimmick over. we could redo the Hebner gimmick.
I want to go through some of your greatest hits here and some of like your most memorable moments from WCW and WWE. And I want to start with the match with Chris Jericho, where he had one hand tied behind his back.
Oh man, that was a blast. They came to me and asked me if I wanted to do the match. And I said, yeah. And I got to know Chris and went to a concert with him and we talked, and he constructed the whole thing, man. And I knew from very early on that he was going to be a big star. It's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time and giving him a chance. But he come up with all of that, man. And the only thing I come up with was him slamming me off the top at the end to set up the kick, and the rest was him. And it was so fun. I wasn't in shape either, man. I tried to start working out a little bit. They hit me with, I thought, okay. Back then I smoked cigarettes and stuff. I'm an idiot, right? But I smoked cigarettes and stuff back then, man. And I had to go out there. And I got going 13 minutes live with a kid like Jericho, even with one hand tied behind his back. You got to go a little bit. And I was taking hip tosses and stuff, but I'd always bail out of the ring and regroup, catch my wind, And then he was gracious, man. He let me get some heat on him, and it let me do a couple of things to him to set up him beating me up in the end. And it got a great reaction, man. And it's funny. We did a German tour right after that happened. And for some reason, I guess they had trouble getting buses. So they rented a bunch of cars, and we had drivers for every car, man. And it was so cool. Me and Booker T got in one car, and they let us just have our own car, and we let people pile their extra bags in there. It was me and Booker T and our driver, man. And we went to all these different towns, and it was fun. It was hey, man, stop here. I said, well, where can we eat? Where's a good bar? It was a lot of fun. So anyway, it was the last day of the tour. Yeah. And we all kind of got to know our drivers a little bit, and everybody got to let their hair down and drink because we didn't have to go anywhere. Last night, last show was over, and we're in the bar, and all of a sudden on the damn sports network on the bar, that match come on, and we're all in there hammering, getting drinking. Now all these drivers of the cars, they're like, they hadn't seen it yet, right? And man, that whole bar went wild, man. They were laughing their butts off at me every time I'd make it one of my faces or I'd do something. I made a lot of my mean faces in that match, but they popped for me, man. And at the end of it, they all gave me the round of applause at the end, and we all drank a beer to it. And it was really a cool experience, man. But the match itself was so much fun. And Chris is so good and so smooth. And like I said, I knew back then he was going to be a big star. And he did, and still is.
One of the other really big moments is you refereed the very first match of Nitro ever.
Which match was that?
This is
who was
Liger versus Pillman.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
I love that you don't even know that. That's
no,
great.
I didn't know that. That's pretty amazing, though. That is cool. Liger and Pillman. I remember working with those guys back in the day. I don't remember the particular match you're talking about, but they had great matches. Working with Pillman was awesome back in the day too. I got a funny Pillman story. I'm working with Pillman at Center Stage, and they wanted him to get juice, and he didn't want to, but he did, and so he hit his head. It was just like a little faint trickle. And he goes, "Hey, Nick," and he goes to hand the damn blade to me. And he just went boop, and he stuck it right in my bicep. And I looked down, and there's this damn little blade sticking out of my bicep. I went, "Oh, crap." So I flicked it, and it came off, and I stepped on it. And I'm looking around like, "Oh, crap." So they keep wrestling, and I reach down, and I scoop it up, I get it in my hand, and I end up getting rid of it, right? So now I'm working the match, and I look, and Brian's got like 2 little drips, and the sweat's almost washing it away. And I looked down at my arm, and I had a trail of blood going from my bicep down my forearm, down my finger, and dripping off my finger. I went, "Holy shit." I saw that. And now the referees are talking, or now the announcer's like, "I wonder what happened to Nick Patrick." Yeah. Oh, well, something happened. He got his bicep. He all of a sudden started bleeding from the bicep, right? Oh, that was crazy. I didn't know what, I just had to kind of keep going with it. I tried to wipe it, but man, that much blood, you wipe it makes it worse, At least it was just kind of a stream for a minute. But, and when I look, and I've got a scar to this day, it's not, it's you can't really see it on this, of course, but I got about, I don't know, I guess it's about an inch long. But it was funny. We got to the back. I said, he realized what happened when he saw my arm bleeding. We got to the back. He come up to me, he goes, "Dude, I'm so sorry." And I looked at him, and I just busted out laughing. And when I busted out laughing, then he busted out laughing. there we both stand laughing, him with 1 trickle of blood, and me looking like I did a transfusion.
Here's a moment you definitely won't forget. Scott Hall making his debut through the audience during
the
match.
Yeah. I was ready for that. A lot of people ask us, did we know what was going on? And we did. I forgot who guys was in the ring. I think it was either Wayne Bloom or Mike Enos was one of the guys.
Mike Enos and Steve Dahl.
Steve Dahl. Okay. Yeah. But we knew it was coming. But I was anxious to see the reaction because, they kept everything so much under wraps back then as to what was going to happen, because they wanted to surprise the boys, and they didn't want any kayfabe sheets. They wanted to keep it out of that, unless there were certain things they wanted leaked, and then they'd leak it themselves, But that was really a pretty well kept secret. But, they did let us that was in the match know that there was a point in time that he'd be coming out. We didn't know when, but we knew it was going to happen.
But then that match just stops.
Yeah. I guess that's what they wanted us to do. We were all in awe of what happened. I mean, and that kind of makes sense in a way. It put more emphasis on his intro, than it did the match, but that was what it was intended to do. And bad for those guys in the ring, but it accomplished what they wanted to accomplish.
Walk me through the very last episode of Nitro, because I remember watching that live. I remember it all unfolding with Shane being there. What was the atmosphere like backstage there?
Everybody was kind of really apprehensive and wondering whether they was going to have jobs, and the crew really felt bad because crew people, that was their gig, and they turned down other gigs, other sports gigs, and because they had booked up for like 6-8 months or whatever, So then all of a sudden now they don't have 6-8 months worth of work, and they got to try to get out in the flow and get on with football, which already has people, or get on with basketball, which already has people, And it was really hard on them, and it was hard for the crew because especially the night before we had a house show, and from all the people that was at the house show, they held a meeting and they told us, "Hey, there's a lot of rumors that we're selling to WWE or to WWF at the time. We want to tell you all that it's all bullshit. And we want you to show up down here, and this is going to work. Business is normal. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of talk, but just don't listen to the rumors because it's not true."
Wow.
And we're like, okay. So we show up, and there's Shane and Jerry Briscoe and a bunch of security guys, and they had us all go into a room, which I was cool with it because I was ready to try and make the ride because I was there for Black Saturday too. I'm one of the only people that I know that was at Black Saturday and at Panama City. And it was really similar. He offered everybody a job that was there if you wanted to come and work for him. It was but I felt more comfortable. The first time at Black Saturday, I turned it down and stayed with the people I was working with. I could have got in. That's a whole nother funny story too. I could have got in on the ground floor at WWE, and I didn't. Oh man, I'll tell you that story later. It's funny, but what was I talking about before I started rambling about that?
So you were there. You're in a room with Shane, Jerry Briscoe.
Oh yeah, so we're in the room, Shane and Jerry Briscoe, and I was cool because I've known Jerry Briscoe since I was a kid, and I felt comfortable talking to him. And I knew Jim Ross because I wrestled when I was a wrestler down in Mid-South in Louisiana. He was there, and I wrestled there for a few months, and my dad knew him real well, so I knew some people, and I felt comfortable that whatever they told me was true. And so I sat and I talked to them, and they told everybody that everybody would be offered a job, and that they were going to have a big meeting in Atlanta, and that they would sit down and talk to everybody individually. So I was very fortunate. By that time, I had become an agent at WCW and was an employee. So when they got bought out, and they told me I was off for like 6 months before they started using me. And a lot of guys went to the little training thing that they had, so guys could get used to working, because they had a 20-foot ring instead of an 18-foot ring. And it's a different company, up there, and they was trying to get guys acclimated to what they were about to get into. But
what a surprise that must have been. Like, you just show up for work and you're like,
oh, it was.
McMahon is here?
Yeah, it was. And then there was a lot of people crying and upset because they knew that was their, their last time that they were going to be there, and then that things were going to change. And but that was pretty amazing, man. I was offered a job, and then they came and I sat down with Jim Ross when he came to town, and sat and talked to him, and they didn't offer me the agent job, and I didn't want to go in up there as an agent, because agents up there, man, they had and I was really glad I thought that, because I was right when I got up there. I heard Steve Kern say it when he first went up there. They'll pull you aside and say, if you're going to survive up here, you have to learn to be able to swallow a great big mouthful of shit and like it. So whether you're right or wrong, and that's how you survive up here. And that's not that, man, that's just really not me. I figured I could still have a job, which I really needed a job. I told you my son's autistic, but my kids were still in school. I wanted to get my kids through school. And so I said, hey, a referee job is fine with me, and they offered me, I took a $50,000 a year cut in pay, guaranteed base pay. I was making a certain amount as an agent at WCW, and they offer you a certain amount base pay at WWE, but you get paid a percentage. And I always got more than my base pay, always a good bit more. So, but on paper, to look at it, to go from one and the other to be a $50,000 difference, like,
you get a percentage of what, the gate?
Yeah.
But I mean, then that ended up turning into a whole other thing, the WCW Invasion.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get in. Might as well get into it now. You had a match with Earl Hebner.
Oh, that was fun too, man. Earl is a good friend of mine, and it was funny. They got us together, and Earl had heat from doing the Montreal Screwjob.
Of course, he still has heat from that.
Yeah, and they wasn't sure who was going to really be the heel out of this thing, because they knew. First off, when WWE bought us, all the WWE fans hated everybody from WCW. It was like they hated us. Even if you was a babyface, they hated you. So I already had heat from being the NWO thing. Plus, they hated me because I was WCW. So I said, if they're going to hate me, and I guarantee they're going to take me as the heel. They said, really? You think so? I said, watch this, because I had the next match. And I popped out through the curtain, and I did like I used to do when I was a heel at WCW, and I was on my way to the ring. I bust out through the curtain with that mean mug face and looking at everybody like I was challenging the whole dang world. Because to me, it really gets heat. Which, if you see somebody and in your mind, you know, you say, I can whoop this guy's ass, you know, and he's giving you the mean mug, and you know, that gets heat to me, you know. And I did it. I walked out through that curtain. I walked to the top of the ramp, and I looked at both sides of the arena with my face, and man, they went off booing me because they already hated me because I was WCW and the nWo thing too, you know. But doing that ignited it, man. And so when I come back to the curtain after the match, they went, okay, you're going to be the heel. That's okay.
You actually you had a handful of matches. We talked about the one with Jericho. We talked about the one here with Earl Hebner. You also had you and the Dudley Boyz versus Jericho, The Rock, and Mike Chioda. How cool.
Oh, yeah. That was my chance to beat all three of them at the same time, man. That was awesome. No, that was a lot of fun. That was we got a big pop out of that, and the Dudley Boyz put in the work, man. All I really did was stand on the apron and get heat until it was time to come in at the end. You know, they did all the work, man. And hats off to those kids, because I love those kids. Those kids were good talent, man, and drew money for different organizations, and great attitudes and good guys. And that match was a lot of fun. When they finally got their hands on me at the end, the people dug it, man. Then Chioda, I think, gave me the kicks and ended up doing the people's elbow on me.
The referee's elbow.
Yeah, I think I took a rock bottom, and then I ended up getting a Chioda people's elbow. And then after that, I got up and beat all three of them and pinned them and put my foot on their chest and then on double bicep. And then I woke up.
How much do you think has changed with the way that referees work from the 90s, early 2000s to what we see now?
They want you more to just blend in and not be as much of an authority figure. They don't want you to be as verbal, you know, now on TV. At least I noticed that. But
especially in WWE, like I think even the most hardcore WWE fans don't know the names of the referees. Whereas just off of the top of my head, I know Mike Chioda and Teddy Long and Tim White and Nick Patrick and Charles.
Yeah, you knew all the old guys. Yeah, you knew all the old guys.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm bad about that too, because there's a couple of those young kids that I really like their work. They're pretty good, and it really up there. If you're not pretty good, you're not going to be there for very long. So most of those kids are.
In AEW, the referees seem to have a little bit of leniency. They're able to like showcase a little bit of personality there.
Yeah, I like that too, because the ref is a big part of the match, you know. But you have to know when to do it and when not to do it. You have to realize that it's not there. You're not there to get yourself over. You're there to get them over. And if there's a little spot that gets you over, then that little spot is yours, and that's fine. And you don't have to keep shining that you've got your spot in. You've got over. The rest is for them, you know. And as a ref, that's what you have to realize, you know. Unless, of course, you're in a gimmick where they're turning your heel and doing something with you, then you go all out with it. But you have to know, as you know, when you're not and you're just a regular ref, you have to know how much and when to back off. It's a feel thing, you know. Like especially like in tag matches. When the baby face draws you and they got the other guy, and then the heels are double and triple up. And if you keep your back turned too long, all of a sudden the people are no longer mad at the guys that are beating up the baby face. They're mad at your stupid ass because you're not turning around and looking at it, you know? You got to have that feel, and you got to let them have enough time to get the people mad, but you got to turn and around before that heat starts shifting off onto you. You know, and that we got to do a lot more of that back in the old school. And today is more, everything's just kind of choreographed and talked about. And back in the old school days, you know, we worked a lot. You know, we went out and called it. And it was like doing ad lib. And when you're doing that, you have to be able to have character, and you know, so it just helps add to it. But it's like I said, it's a different day. You know, they're not doing new. I don't think anybody does ad lib anymore. They damn sure don't do it on TV. You know, if there's anybody that does any kind of ad lib calling it in the ring, it may be at a house show somewhere, but that'd be the only place you'd see it.
Is Charles Robinson like ageless? Like the fact that he's still doing this now is
Yeah, man,
unbelievable.
he's great, a great guy too, man. I'm so glad that he's up there and still able to ride that wave, because that's a hard wave to ride up there, man. I tell you right now, especially because he went back to back too. I did 12 years in WCW and then 9 years in WWE back to back. The only time I was off was when they got bought out or if I was hurt. And man, the intensive travel, like you go out overseas somewhere every month, so I've been around the world at least a dozen times, and I'm not saying this to sound funny. I literally don't care if I ever again in my life get on another airplane and go anywhere. If I can't get there in a car, I tell them, if I can't get there in a car or a boat, and it better be a pretty short ride with both of those, then I don't want to go. And it's not. First off, I got too much stuff on me right now. I'm taking care of my people, and and running a wrestling company. And there's some of my own shows that I can't even get away and get to because I can't get somebody to watch my mom and my son, but I've got people to handle stuff for me. I've got a really good team of people working for me. So I never, I don't worry about anything about me not being at a show. It's in good hands. I've got good people working for me, and I got a good crew of kids too, the people that I use. But as far as that goes, I've just been so busy taking care of my mom and my son, and trying to run a wrestling company. That's
And it's Deep South Wrestling, which
yes,
fans
yeah,
will be
right here on
familiar
the
with.
shirt, man. This is part of our swag right here. My dad. I don't know if you can see it good or not, but
Like the camera was like purposely not showing it there.
well, let me see if I can tip us down here and
There
show
we
some
go.
swag.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
a little bit of swag right
Yeah.
there. That'll keep us back on track here. Are we good? All right, man. Yeah, then we got hoodies and stuff. But anyway, Deep South Wrestling is the company that Pop and I started back in 1986. I was down with a major knee surgery, and he was in between territories. And he bought a ring and a place, and we started just training the local guys that were interested in wanting to become wrestlers. And there wasn't any local promotions here at the time, and we were getting calls from people wanting us to run shows. So hell, we started running shows too. Next thing you know, we was on Atlanta TV. And we did a joint promotion with Bill Watts in Omni, and we suddenly we grew and turned into something. And I said earlier that it ended up blossoming when Pop went to work for WCW. They wanted to start a training facility, and they put him in charge of it. So our little Deep South just kind of morphed into the power plant.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, the power plant is legendary.
yeah, power plant cranked out a bunch of wrestlers, a lot of legendary names, talent that for different companies, and people that you'd see, and and some of them got Japan deals because back then, if you couldn't get a good deal here, sometimes if you had a good connection, somebody could get you something going in Japan. And there were some guys, it's a lot of travel, and you got to be in a good spot, especially now to make the money like guys. I don't know if anybody's making money like guys used to back in the day. Back in the day, a lot of guys would just Japan was all they would do. They'd take the time off to recuperate from their Japanese tours while they was home. In the States, you had to keep yourself busy the whole time. I remember Pop coming home from a couple of times from overseas when I was a little kid, and just pulling out wads of money and throwing it on the table like, holy crap, did you rob a bank? And no, I just came from Japan. And it's, man, I'm going to grow up and go there someday. And I did.
Nick, Booker T recently said that he thinks that you should be in the Hall of Fame, and it's hard to disagree with that sentiment.
Well, that's cool, man. I appreciate that coming from somebody that is as talented as Booker T and has done as much in our industry as Booker T has. He's a good friend of mine, and we did a lot of traveling together. And he's seen, he's seen what I was able to do. He knows I can agent. I'm not just a referee guy. I can wrestle. I can agent. I don't ref anymore, man. I had my retirement match here, and I picked two kids that really, man, they really shine, and they got a local following. And one of my local shows, I had a retirement match, and they had an I Quit match. It was a culmination of a 3-match series that they had. And I ref the I Quit match because I was all about doing that, because you're not up and down counting. You're just putting a microphone to somebody's mouth, asking if they want to quit. I was like, I can do that now, and I also make that my retirement one, because man, like I said about all my injuries and bad attitude and all that, I'm out of the ring. It's so fun, and if you do it, it's an art, and if you can't paint the picture the way you want to paint it anymore, then it's time to let somebody else paint. You know what I mean? And to me, I love doing it, and I love the feel of it. But damn it, I'm 62 years old, and I got arthritis, and it hurts anymore to do it, and it hurts to get up and down. And I'm almost to a point with my right knee now where I'm feeling like it's almost to like bone on bone, and I'm hoping that I can. I'm not sure what my next move is. I don't want to. Dang sure don't want to do a knee replacement. But I know they got this new thing where they shoot some gel in there.
Stem cells could be an option.
Yeah, I'm looking at different options, before I get on Social Security here in the next couple of years, and still got insurance, and then to see what I can do about that, because right now I wouldn't want to try and get in the ring and hang with a couple of young kids. I'd take away from their match, and I would never want to do that to any young talent that's going out there and trying to get themselves over, saddled down with an old fart that can't hardly get up and down. The knees are shot, so I had my retirement match, and those kids, I mean to tell you, if you check out deepsouth.com and We Are Deep South on YouTube / We Are Deep South, you can find all of our stuff. And the match I'm talking about, my retirement match, it's a 2-part. I put out a match when I have little seasons. And when I have a season, I put out a match a week, and it's like a little 30-minute show. And I build every match that I do. I say Deep South, where every match is a main event. So when we do a show, you may be the third match on the card, but you're still going to get a week where we take your match and highlight it and make it the main event for that week. So just because you weren't the last match on the card, that doesn't mean you're not going to get your week. So that's how I'm trying to present it. And I'm trying to let the kids go out there and work and get over and tell stories, because we got kids that can. And the system that they're locked into to try to get looked at, I just so firmly disagree with, man. I see these kids coming up trying to pour everything they can into doing a 5-minute match and a 5-minute presentation in front of a bunch of folks that's critiquing them, and you're supposed to hook their attention and make you think, well, why it makes me want to buy you in 5 minutes, when the very same people that are sitting there watching these kids, if you put a pair of boots and a pair of tights on them and put their butts in the ring and told them to entertain me and make me want to give you a contract in 5 minutes, they couldn't do it themselves. And it puts these kids in an unfair situation, just in my opinion. And I know that they've got so many to look through, and they've got to find a way to do it. They got to pay somebody to take a look at these kids and find out who the storytellers are, because there are some out there. And that's who I'm looking for, and that's who I find, and that's who I put on my Deep South shows. The kids that are out there every weekend somewhere, not just in this area, but in a 4 or 5 state area. These kids they're putting it in. They got regular jobs, some of them, and families, and training in the gym and going to these. It's hard to not be a fan for some of these kids, because they're paying dues. To me, they're paying dues more than the kids that are getting paid to train at the big facilities. There's a lot of pressure there, but you're getting paid, and you're not having family life and a regular 8-hour job and hitting the gym. You're getting paid to work out and paid to be in the ring then. And that's an ideal situation for somebody that's young, but that's not for everybody. And all these there's some of these young kids that deserve to be in that spot. And I had a couple of kids that I know that are very close that went all the way from Atlanta up to Charlotte to get looked at. They've been worked out for like a month, 2 months, trying to get ready for this, because they knew in advance that they were coming to Charlotte, and they got lined up and we'll come and we'll look at you. They got up there, and Vince had a bad day and got pissed off and come out and run everybody out of the arena. Everybody out. And all these kids, their dreams and aspirations, their hopes, everything that they've built for, out the door. And to me, I realize there's a bigger picture to look at, but people are people, man. And that's no damn way to treat people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I won't do that. And when I find the kids that can tell a story, I'm going to give them a chance to tell a story. So that's what Deep South is about, man. We're trying to be different. I don't want to look like everybody else or be like everybody else. If I can't be different, I'm not going to do it. And so that's what I'm looking for right now. And check us out, man. We're putting out some really good stuff right now.
I got one more for you. WrestleMania 23. You refereed the match between JBL and John Cena when John Cena won his very first World Heavyweight Championship.
I did a lot of matches with those guys. They had those guys married together for a little while, is what they call it, you know, when they run the loop and all the house shows and different, you know. And I did several. Was that the I Quit match, or was because I did an I Quit match with him too? I don't think it was.
No, this was WrestleMania 23. Like
straight
a match, yeah.
Oh yeah,
I love how you refereed so many matches that you're like, I don't know, sure.
I'm not trying to be like big headed, but they, you know, if you think about it and you watch the advertisement for every pay-per-view, everyone is billed as the biggest one since sliced bread, and you have to treat it that way because it's a business. But man, I did 12 years in WCW and 9 in WWE with going overseas somewhere every month and a pay-per-view every month and 2 live TVs every week. And after a while, they kind of run together. I can remember a lot of things that happened and what happened in the background, but sometimes putting them all in a chronological order is very difficult because it's just so broad of, you know.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick. What do you think is the biggest match that you've ever been a part of?
Well, it would have had to have been the Hogan Sting match simply because of the highest grossing stuff. But there was other matches back in the day, man, that were equally important to the industry. Like if you look at Dusty Rhodes' old highlight film, when he won the title in the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, one time against Harley Race, and a young Nick Patrick was the referee there. I was in my early 20s, man, and that was unbelievable to be able to work those two guys. And they were shooting an angle for Japan. They're filming it, and I was the ref for it. You know, so it doesn't, for that era, that doesn't get much bigger than that. But and all the WrestleMania stuff is huge. But I would have to say that the biggest one would, you know, like, because of the grossing deal, was the one we talked about earlier with Sting and Hogan.
Yeah, it's the most
had the most eyes on it.
I mean, it's the most famous and also the most infamous, or at least one of the most infamous matches in a WCW. Although there's a lot of infamous matches in WCW. The finger poke, the Jarrett laying down. I mean, we could talk all day about all this stuff. It's such a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you. And I know that everybody's going to want to go check out Mailbag Monday on adfreeshows.com. It's every second week you're on there, right? Yes, sir. Yeah, we rotate weeks. Me and old Mike Chioda there. After I put it on him in that tag match, I have to give him a plug now so he can help him heal up after all these years, man. But he's a really great guy. Mike is such a good guy. He was on the show
super
about a year ago.
I always liked him, man. He's one of the guys I always really got along well with up there. There was several good people up there, man. It made it bearable, you know, because you know, the office is always trying to break you down and see how much crap you'll take, you know, but they got some really super good people up there, man. And I wonder how some of them survived, man. They just thick-skinned, I guess, man. Bless their hearts. And Howard Finkel, man, how did he survive? What a super guy he was too, man. I got to really meet some really cool people up there, and I was glad I got to experience that. You know, I always kind of wanted to go up there. Tell you how the Black Saturday story. I first met Vince McMahon. I used to go early back to kayfabe was so huge back in the day that when we was doing our or Georgia Championship wrestling tapings right before Black Saturday, our producers, our camera people, there wasn't a production meeting where they were told everything that was going to happen, because Ole kayfabed everybody, man. They didn't need to know. They work baseball and football. It's their damn job to catch it, you know? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, okay, this isn't work. You know, and they do see us all sitting here in the same locker room back here. I mean, they're not stupid, for God's sake. And there's going to come a time that if we let them know what we're doing, that maybe this cameraman might be in the perfect position, you know? So I would go and stand in the control room because I was really interested in listening to the director. Okay, camera 2, cut to this, camera 3, you know, and I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to learn both ends of it because in my mind, I wanted to try and become the liaison guy between the two, because I, as a referee, I had to sit and listen to every match and every spot and everything. And I knew what was going on, you know, and I could relay that to, okay, look, at this point in time, this is coming. If you get in position, you know, so I figured that would be a good thing for me coming for the future, right? So one day I'm standing in a control room and there's this guy standing back there with his arms folded, making his face, you know, and I'm like, damn, who's this guy? You know, because back in the day when we was working at on Turner, they wanted no blood. And I mean, you could accidentally get smashed in the nose, or I mean, because accidents happen. You know, sometimes you get a legitimate nosebleed, and man, they would go through the roof about, you know, like we did it on purpose. You know, so this guy was standing there was making his face. I thought, oh God, because here's one of those Turner execs coming down here to get on somebody's butt, right?
Right.
So I didn't say anything to him, you know, and I just checked him out. And when I walked by, I went, how you doing? And I just, you know, that was it. I kept on going. Well, it turns out that person was Vincent K. McMahon, standing there doing this because he has just taken over the whole wrestling world down here. And if I would have been smart enough to come up and say, hi, I'm Nick Patrick. I'm just hanging out in here because this is my idea of, you know, I could have been on the ground.
Oh man.
Yeah. But instead, you know, I didn't know who the heck he was.
Sure.
You know, I was just trying to avoid an ass chewing. he didn't look happy. You know, he can make that face and make his lips poked out and all. And I thought to myself, and this is going to sound terrible. I thought to myself, this was my exact thoughts in my head. I thought, damn, who's this stupid looking son of a bitch? You know, because you know, and little did I know, Vincent K. McMahon. And I said, hey, how you doing? And just walked right by, man. So you know what the hell? I have no regrets though. I love the road that I went down, and you know, but I just thought that was a funny story. You know, you know, it wasn't meant for me to go down that road at that time. You know,
what a life you've lived, both in the ring and outside of the ring. What a legacy you've left. The stories that you have, and we've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah,
amazing. Nick, it's been such a pleasure, and I end every conversation talking about gratitude because it's such a big part of my life. So, what are 3 things in your life that you're grateful for right now?
I'm grateful for the support that I get from my family, take care of my mom, and the support I also get from my friends. I'm grateful because I asked God there at the end of my career, man, I was burnt out on the road and I wanted to get out somehow. And still, you know, I said, look, I don't need to have a whole lot of money. I don't want to sleep in the car. I don't want to be broke with my family, but I need to be home. My parents are getting old. I got an autistic son to take care of, and I got to find a way that I can do it from home, and because I got to get off the road. When you're sitting in a hotel room in a 5-star hotel, and that's what people, you know, that's where people go on their vacations, and you know, and then they pay money to do that, and you're thinking to yourself, man, is this as good as it gets? It's time to get out. You know, and I had too many things on my mind that I needed to address and take care at home. So I'm thankful that God gave me the opportunity to be able to come home and start a company at home and be able to make enough money where I'm not rich. I ain't making a ton. I ain't really making hardly anything, but I ain't going under. I ain't sleeping in a car. I got a company that I'm running, and I'm taking care of my family. So all the things that I asked for came true. And as far as being grateful for anything else, I'm grateful that I was able to experience all the things that I did and see all the things that I was able to see, because I was able to see the good side of the world and I was able to see the bad side, and realize that you meet the same people on the way down that you do on the way up, and show kindness all the time. You know, be a real person. Don't ever get so full of yourself that your problems are all of a sudden the most important thing in the world, because there's always somebody out there who's got way, way worse problems than you do. And they're holding their head up and they're fighting every day. So, you know, that I'm thankful that I was able to see and learn that.
Well, I'm thankful for this time with you, Nick. I told you it'd be like 45 minutes, but man, these stories are just so good. I'm glad we kept going with them.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks for having me, man. Anytime you want to talk, holler at me, dude. I'm around, man. We'll talk wrestling, whatever, man. That's like we do on the mailbag. We'll talk whatever, man.
I love it. Nick Patrick, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.